Release my blazing five, but everybody thinks it's the biggest game in Cleveland in 20 years. I mean, it's the Sunday Night Football, which is now bigger in our lifetime. Monday Night Football when we were kids. Sunday Night Football is now bigger than Monday Night Football, and the Browns are on it. And they're facing the Rams, who are in the Super Bowl. I think Cleveland's going to play as well as they can play, and I don't think they're brilliantly coached yet. I think Baker will probably play well. Everybody feels like it's a prove-it game for the Browns. I'm going to flip this, Doug, and I want you to respond. No, it's a prove-it game for the Rams. You just paid Jared Goff $135 million. Donald got paid. Gurley got paid. Brandon Cooks got paid. The GM Les Snead got paid. Everybody's getting extensions. Veteran team to the Super Bowl. They have looked bad. They got worked in the Super Bowl. They've looked bad in 2 games offensively. The offensive line is aging because they've paid top people. They have no depth on this football team. Super Bowl losers don't generally make the playoffs. And my expectations for the Rams, Sean McVay is Elon Musk, is here. Cleveland, 9-7. Nobody outside of Cleveland would think that's a failure. I think the pressure's on the Rams.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
I don't think the Rams look great, especially in Carolina. They were dying to be beaten in Carolina.
Yes.
I did think they started to get a rhythm last week and on both sides of the ball. I think this is a coaching mismatch of epic proportions if you look at the head coaches, right? McVay is the guy that everyone's trying to copy and catch up to, right, as opposed to Freddie Kitchens, who's looked a little bit over his skis in terms of managing all of the egos and personalities. And if you want to tell me that the Rams haven't looked good, that's fine. We were just talking about the Browns and how they didn't dominate a Jets team playing a third-string quarterback and one that's, you know, they're decimated by injuries. And then you go back to week 1 losing at home. I think the Rams, this is expected. They didn't expect to be firing on all cylinders. They don't play their star players in the preseason. They use the first couple weeks as the preseason. And they have played these made-for-TV games, and they've lived up to the billing. I think Jared Goff might, right now, be the most underrated player in the National Football League. If you ask personnel people, they'll say, man, Jared Goff's really good. You know, I talked to the Charger people after they did 2 days of scrimmages. They said the first day, Jared Goff lit them up. They said they adjusted some in the second day. Like, man, Jared Goff's really good. Talked to the Raider people. And when they went up there and did the scrimmages with the Raiders, he played. They said, man, Jared Goff is really, really good. So I hear you. I don't think they've looked like the Patriots in week 2. I don't think they've looked like the Ravens. But you also have to take into account level of competition. That's the big thing. Now, we do this in college football. We're like, look at their stats. Yeah, okay, did they play Austin Peay or did they play Texas A&M, right? Did they play at home or did they play on the road? If you've played the Dolphins, you cannot count that as a real NFL game. They are non-competitive. If you played the Arizona Cardinals, you can't count it. Both those teams stink. By design, they stink.
Yeah.
We have reached an era in the NFL where it's like the NBA, it's like, frankly, Major League Baseball, where there are going to be non-competitive teams that are playing for next year and the year after that. And I think we're holding the Rams to a standard which they don't even hold themselves to, considering they don't play their stars in the preseason.
There's an amazing thing, Doug, happening in football in America. 20 years ago, you didn't have these 7-on-7 camps. The high school football coaching now is significantly more sophisticated than it was 20 years ago.
Sure.
Just on the West Coast, Arizona State, BYU, and USC have freshman quarterbacks that are like, Zach Wilson's actually a sophomore at BYU. Yeah. But like they're kids. They're like 19, and they're really good. Like really good. So I'm watching all these young quarterbacks. They're coming into this league with 1 million snaps. 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. It didn't work that way. You used to play all the sports as a kid. Now, if you're a quarterback at 7, that's all you do. So I'm watching Lamar Jackson, and I do want to be, I want to push back and go, I'm not sure. And I'm like you. I'm like, not sure. But, man, Josh Allen looks pretty good, and Lamar doesn't. Kyler quickly picked it up, and Baker last year, and Sam last 4 games of the year last year. Darnold was it. Is it possible now that almost all of these young quarterbacks, they're coming in, Doug, much more refined, and maybe Lamar, who I had huge doubts on, maybe he's just pretty darn good.
You should go down on Friday night. You know, Matt Leinart and his brother, they have the Matt Leinart League, which is all over Southern California.
Right.
It's a flag football league.
Yeah.
And it's really remarkable. Like my son plays tackle and flag, but so many of the athletes now, everybody plays flag. Right. Everybody plays in the line.
Right.
Everybody. And so I mean and there's no real running outside occasional pitch. It's all passing, reading defenses, zone versus man.
I mean, what do you make of Lamar? I mean,
well, we need to breathe on Lamar because we've seen this. I mean, when Vince Young first started, he was a Pro Bowler. Okay,
he was,
and now Lamar is much more refined off the football field. Doesn't have the issues.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just pointing out that we have seen the athletic quarterback and the Saturday offense work for a short period of time.
No, your running quarterbacks always work. They don't last, but RG3 made the playoffs.
The question is third down. Okay.
Right.
The 2 or 3 most important stats in the NFL are what do you do on third down? And how do you turn the ball over? Do you turn the ball over? And remember, these offenses, especially when you're running a lot and when you pitch it a lot, it does turn the football over.
Lamar's didn't have a turnover this year.
I understand.
Yeah.
But they played the Dolphins, who suck.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Dolphins had a bad plan, didn't execute the plan, and don't have the talent to execute any plan that they did have.
Right.
Okay. Let's see what happens. Kansas City will be a little bit telling. Once you get to week 5, week 6, week 7, you start playing teams in the division. We see you the second time around. That's when you figure it out, okay? Because if we saw the Chargers, the first time they saw him, they did a good job against him. The second time in the playoffs, he got booed off the football field.
Yeah.
Now, I'm willing to believe that he's improved.
I think
that they've tinkered their offense, that you bring in Hollywood Brown, that you take the top off the defense and create gaping holes. But he hasn't been an accurate short and intermediate passer. He hasn't had to make those throws consistently.
Yeah.
They've been drops in the bucket, which he's always done well when he's had time. Let's see. Let's just take a breath. He's been great. Dak's been great. But they've both played against non-competitive, non-playoff teams, and it's very early in the season where teams are kind of figuring out what they're doing.
Funny thing with Dak, we talked about this yesterday. Dak's coordinator, nobody has film on him. Kellen Moore literally has literally nobody has film on Kellen Moore. So they doubled their play-action pass attempts in Dallas first 2 games. Everybody's like nobody knows what to get from Kellen Moore. So you're kind of, and I'm not saying Dak's been very good. They've gotten him really nice weapons. But there is something to be, I always think great is people try to stop Kobe for 20 years. You had all this film. He was still like 28. Like, great is year after year. Do we have time for, I got one more segment.
Okay.
So Nick Saban said, we don't have sound, we have a bite. Nick Saban was talking about his regret in the NFL. Now, Greg, do we have a bite or, okay, a full screen. And Nick Saban talked about it. And Nick said, people think I wanted to try the NFL. He goes, I loved LSU. He goes, I made a huge mistake. I left college football. That's what I take away from the Dolphins. If there was one thing professionally that I would do over again, I just wouldn't have left LSU. We loved it. We had a good time. We put a lot of time into it. What do you make of Saban's, it wasn't as bad as Spurrier. There was moments in Miami. His team doctor wouldn't allow him to have Breeze. It would change everything. What did you make of his NFL move? I think
it's a parallel to what Rick Pitino said about leaving Kentucky. I left Camelot, and he did. He had it rolling. And who knows how we would look at Rick Pitino now, who by my estimation is the greatest college basketball coach of this and maybe any generation.
Yeah, people will tell you, basketball people will tell you, Pitino's the best game coach.
Game coach. He was an innovator. He embraced the three-point shot before everybody else. Hell, when he was with the Celtics, they were tanking before tanking was cool. Remember, they had 2 lottery picks to try and get Tim Duncan. They didn't get either. Tim Duncan goes to Spurs. The rest is Tim Duncan is his Drew Brees, right? So I think it's like anything in life. You don't understand what you have until you don't have it.
No, that's
don't have it anymore. And sometimes I've taken a professional journey, which I thought at the time was the right move, and did not turn out to be the right move for me personally. But I also think that you can't tell the story without telling the quarterback story.
Yes.
And the perfect example of it is what he's experienced at Alabama, right? If Jalen Hurts isn't good enough in the national championship game, you just go and put Tua in the game.
And he won the game.
Right? And then if Tua's hurt and he's not good enough in the SEC championship game, you're like, hey, Jalen, I left you at the passer. Come in and win me the game. You can't do that in the NFL.
Right.
You are going to be forever tied to the biggest decision you make, which is, who's going to be my quarterback?
Yeah.
And if you screw it up, it's a pretty good chance you're going to be out of work.
Herm Edwards, who's having really to some surprising success at Arizona State, has this great young freshman quarterback. And Herm always told me, he goes, Colin, go look at Belichick. Go look at the Cleveland quarterback. He goes, Bill's he coached against Bill 15 times. He goes, Bill's as smart as they get. Bill had a pretty choppy career. You know, Belichick told Herm. It was the game. It was actually the game in which Bledsoe got hurt. True story. So Herm and Belichick met at midfield. They've been longtime friends. And there were people on the New England staff that said, if we don't win today, we're putting our houses up for sale. And Bledsoe gets knocked out.
I did my first national radio show, filled in for a guy named Todd Wright up in Bristol that night.
30 seconds.
And I said, Patriots are done. They got some guy named Tom Brady starting. Somebody please, in Bristol, destroy that tape, because obviously I was a
You remember
little bit
it, though. That was one of your first shows.
It was the first weekend of football after 9/11. And I was up there. I was in Sliders, I think was the sports bar. And I'm watching, and he goes down. Bledsoe didn't get out of bounds. He got hit. And Tom Brady comes in.
Any weekend that includes Sliders is a good weekend. We'll just leave it at that. The Duggar, Fox Sports Radio after us. Greg Cosell next. Great first hour of The Herd.